Who's the hardest killer to play in DBD? Let's start from the easy ones. Legion. He's very beginner friendly. His power is really easy to use and understand. Find somebody, pop your power, injure somebody, then the position of the other survivors is gonna be revealed to you, and you wanna start chasing your next prey. Being able to fast fall pallets and windows helps new players who struggle with mind games, and the killer instinct helps you finding survivors who are hiding. Wraith, one of the best killers for new players. His power is simple and easy to understand. Being undetectable makes it easy for new players to patrol gens and find survivors to chase. Super straightforward. Become invisible, find somebody, start chasing. Also, his speed when uncloaking makes it a little bit easier to do mind games. I still think that it's slightly more difficult to play Wraith instead of Legion because you are literally just an M1 killer. So, you need to understand how to mind game in order to be effective. No pallet vaulting for the poor invisible guy. The next one is gonna be the Skull Merchant, another killer with an easy playstyle. Also, a lot of survivors hate playing against her, so they won't feel as confident during chases. Deploying the drones is fast, easy, and it's hard to do something wrong when using your power, as you will passively gain value over time from chasing where you placed your drones. Place a drone in a strong loop and survivors will be forced to either move away from the loop or automatically lose a health state. Also, being undetectable will help you in many situations. The Plague. One of the easiest killers to play in DBD in my opinion. Yeah, sure, she's a ranged killer, but even on controller it's hard to mess up when using your power. The fact that survivors will basically be injured for the whole match will be incredibly helpful for new players to quickly end chases. Also, you can pair that with perks like Thanatophobia in your build, slowing down survivors, so that you won't see all of the gens popping at once as soon as you make a mistake. Your green and yellow add-ons are very good, giving you 2 extra black fountains at the beginning of the match, and they are cheap and easy to find in blood webs, so you can just spam them every single game. Myers. Definitely not one of the most efficient killers in DBD to win games, he's still one of the easiest ones to play. Easy to understand and easy to use power. Hide, stalk people to 99% of your tier 2, start a chase and pop your tier 3 before going for an M1. Just repeat the same process for the whole match, that's all you need to know. Next one on the list is Freddy. One of the weakest killers in the game in my opinion, but his power and playstyle are kinda straightforward and easy to understand. Place your snare where people are looping and try to hit them with an M1. Teleport to patrol gens and sometimes try to fake your teleport for mind games. That's literally all you can do, except for using the add-on that lets you generate fake pallets. In that case, the way you will approach the game is probably even more straightforward and easy than using your snare. The Pig. We are slowly moving towards the medium characters, with the Pig being close to the top of the easy characters list. Her playstyle is easy to understand, even though her power is not incredibly easy to use when chasing somebody. After you down a survivor, place a trap on their head and you will passively gain value over time from using your traps. Try to apply pressure on survivors who are trying to remove their traps and maybe you'll see a head popping. The Hag. We've reached the top of the easy category. You can consider this character the hardest of the easy category or the easiest of the medium category. Similar playstyle to the Trapper, but her power is a lot easier to use since you don't need to waste time picking up your traps. They are a lot harder to spot and have a much larger area around them where survivors can trigger them. Spam your traps, create a dead zone, and set traps around hooks to create pressure and start chases. Alien. This is officially our first medium difficulty character. His high mobility thanks to the tunnels make it a lot easier to put pressure on survivors and patrol gens. His power is easy to understand but still requires some skill. You only need to worry about the flamethrowers, but as long as you immediately walk towards them, it will be surprisingly easy to destroy them. The Good Guy. Just like every other undetectable killer, it's gonna be a lot easier to catch survivors out of position. Other than that, being so short makes it harder for survivors to keep track of his movements when looping, so the chasing is 10 times easier with this killer. His dash is a strong ability, his speed and maneuverability don't require you to be incredibly precise as there's room for errors, but definitely requires some skill. Clown. Being effective with this killer is not easy at all, but that's just because he's not a very strong killer. His power is not hard to use and kinda straightforward. Slow down survivors when looping and try to get a hit before they reach a pallet or a window. Boost your speed when possible. Even though his power is easy to use and understand, he's a medium difficulty character because a good understanding of looping and mind gaming is required to use this killer. The Twins. This killer's power is easy to understand but not the easiest one to use. When using Victor, being undetectable will make it easier to find survivors and catch them off guard, but being able to injure some somebody when using your power is not the easiest thing in the world. I wouldn't rank the twins anywhere above the medium category though. Practice your jump with Victor and you'll be good to go. Baba. Some players love playing against Baba, some players hate it. His power is easy to understand, but not the easiest one to use. Something that many of the killers in the medium tier have in common. Requires a decent understanding of how to loop, and sometimes mind gaming when using your power can be quite challenging, especially when playing on indoor maps. If you start playing this killer, please do us all a favor, don't start camping in the basement. The Knight. His power is definitely not easy to use and understand like many of the previous killers. You can do many things with your guards, like breaking pallets, kicking gens, defending hooks and chasing. Also, every guard is unique and has strengths and weaknesses. In order to be effective with this killer, you need to force survivors into looping where you want to chase them, zoning them while trying to coordinate with your guards. A good understanding of his power and how to zone survivors is needed to get a few hook stages with this guy. Nemesis. You will definitely have fun playing as the Nemesis, but this killer requires a fair amount of skill in order to down survivors. The way the zombies behave makes it impossible to rely on them in any way. Sometimes they will injure somebody, but it's usually completely random and you won't be able to create a strategy based on what they do. The way you will chase survivors around loops is oftentimes similar to what you would do playing as the Huntress, and you will face similar problems. When survivors are greedy with the pallets and are good at dodging and juking, it will be hard to injure somebody. The Dredge. Her ability to quickly move around the map is great and one of the best powers in the game, but being effective with this killer is not easy at all. Using your power when chasing is hard. Mind gaming teleporting back to your previous location requires a good understanding of how mind gaming and looping works, and oftentimes survivors will just try to gain distance moving towards another loop. In that case, you might try to predict their movements, teleporting to a locker, but making these predictions is gonna be hard. Doctor. You will have tons of fun playing as the Doctor, as your ability to prevent survivors from vaulting or dropping pallets oftentimes feels incredibly satisfying. Even though it feels like his kit is designed to help new players, as you can easily find survivors when they scream, you will slow them down with your passive abilities and you'll be able to ignore pallets and windows. I wouldn't recommend using this killer to a new player, as oftentimes you will need to make predictions against decent survivors, and without a good understanding of mind games and being able to think and react quickly, it will be almost impossible to use your power efficiently. The Trapper. We are now close to the hard difficulty tier. His power is very straightforward, being one of the easiest ones to understand in DBD, but being able to actually catch survivors with your traps and getting a few hook stages is a completely different story. In order to use this killer, you will need to have a deep knowledge of how maps are designed, how to zone survivors, how to hold the 3-gen and set up a dead zone. He relies a lot on his add-ons and is very map dependent. You'll be racing against the clock 90% of the match until you reach the end game, where you'll need to gain back all the map pressure that you gave away during the early and mid game. Demo. The way this killer works is kinda simple. Place portals, use them to quickly move from one place to another, and when you find a survivor, use your dash to injure or down them. His power is similar to the good guy or Victor, but he's higher on the list as I think it's a little bit harder to use. The Ghostface. Just like the Trapper, this killer is very map dependent. Using his add-ons will help you a lot, and thanks God even the brown ones are great. Definitely not the strongest killer in the game. Being undetectable will help you getting closer to survivors before starting a chase, but oftentimes you will need to keep track of multiple survivors at once while stalking and chasing, hiding most of your body when they'll try to stop your power looking at you from multiple directions. Also, being unpredictable is incredibly important with this killer, and that requires a deep understanding of how survivors behave and what's going on around you. The Trickster. We've finally reached the top of the medium tier category. The hardest killer of this category when playing on mouse and keyboard will just become a hard difficulty killer to play on controller. Nothing fancy about his power, just throw your knives, injure survivors, use your main event, repeat. Keep in mind though that aiming and being able to injure survivors can be quite challenging with this killer. The next one is gonna be the hard to play tier. Vecna. Our first killer in the hard difficulty tier. A lot of reading when using this killer. You must know how all of his powers and all of the special items work. There's a lot of stuff happening that change the core gameplay mechanics, and you need to combine all of your powers effectively in order to down survivors, while also keeping track of all of the cooldowns. Just a difficult killer to play overall. The Dark Lord. Just like Vecna, he has access access to multiple abilities. I think that it's fair to say that playing as the Dark Lord is at least as difficult as playing as Vecna, even though his abilities are stronger, which it means that you will probably be more efficient once you master this killer. Keep in mind though that they recently released this character, which it means that they might change something in the future. Switching between your powers during a chase and being able to predict survivors' movements can be challenging, but you can just constantly use your wolf power during chases and not even bother switching back to a different form. The next one's gonna be Sadako. Not much to say about this killer. Her ability to quickly traverse the map is great, as long as they don't turn off your TVs, but except for that, she's just an M1 killer. So, you need to be extremely good at keeping track of survivors and condemning them, as this is literally all you can do. The unknown. Being able to hit a survivor who knows what he's doing with your power when looping is kinda hard, and you will definitely need to spend a decent amount of hours playing this character in order not to get completely obliterated by a well-coordinated team. His ability to traverse the map using his copies is good, but oftentimes survivors will just destroy them when they spawn in a decent place. Also, the fact that marked survivors can look at you to remove the mark, kinda like the ghost face, makes this character very map dependent. The Death Slinger. Playing this killer on mouse and keyboard instead of controller makes a huge difference, but in both cases I would say that it's just hard to play as the Death Slinger. Harder than playing the Trickster, for instance. The hitboxes are not very forgiving, survivors pre-dropping every pallet on the map will be a huge problem for you, and being able to snipe a survivor doesn't necessarily mean that you will get it down, as they can still break the chain before you get an M1. You will need to practice a lot with this killer. Wesker. His incredibly large terror radius makes it impossible to catch survivors off guard. Even though his power is easy to understand, it's hard to use and master. Chaining both of your dashes to get a hit around a corner, or catching a survivor's off guard double dashing to vault a window or a pallet requires a lot of skill and a deep understanding of the game to properly mind game a good survivor. I wouldn't recommend playing Wesker to a new player. The Artist. Not the strongest killer in the game, but definitely a decent one. You need to be really good at zoning survivors when looping and mind gaming in order to get a down with this killer. Even though your birds can fly through walls, you will need to hit survivors twice in a short amount of time to injure them, unless it's a direct hit, but good survivors will oftentimes just refuse to walk in front of the birds or just leave the loop, which it means that most of the times you will only be able to use the birds to force survivors to go towards a certain location instead of using them to injure somebody. Pyramid. The fact that you can hit survivors through walls, send them to a cage without picking them up and mori them definitely makes this killer a valuable choice. But he's one of the most difficult characters to play in this game. Being able to aim is gonna be hard on controller since this is a ranged killer, but not as hard as the other ranged killers. The problem is that you will oftentimes use his power to hit survivors through walls, which it means that you will need to be very good at guessing what survivors are going to do, especially when facing veteran players, and this comes with a lot of practice and experience. Only, being able to access your power the first time in a match is usually painful to do. Be prepared to see survivors pre-dropping literally every single pallet on the map, but once you get your first hit, you can actually start playing the match. His power is very strong and you'll be able to traverse the map very quickly. Being able to hit somebody unless you catch them off guard and out of position though, which it won't happen against good survivors, is gonna be hard. Being able to do a crazy flick around the corner to down somebody is one of the hardest things to do in this game. Pinhead. Both playing as this character and playing against this character is just complicated. In fact, the whole concept of this character is complicated. Probably one of the best killers in the game. His chain hunt is incredibly strong. We'll need a deep understanding of the game and how to read what survivors are about to do, play this character at his full potential. Also, keep in mind that using your chains when chasing an experienced survivors with good positioning and reaction time is going to be very hard. The Huntress. We finally talk about my favorite killer in DBD. As some of you know, I'm a Huntress main and I play on controller. Yeah, I know, that's sad. If you play on mouse and keyboard, you can consider this a hard difficulty killer. If you play on controller, just like me, you can consider the Huntress one of the hardest killers to play in DBD. It's actually difficult to say how hard it is to play as the Huntress though, as it can get as difficult as you want it to be. Being able to hit a survivor who's vaulting a window Kinda easy. Being able to hit a survivor who's running across the map, extremely hard. We've finally made it to the very hard tier. Being able to master one of these killers is gonna be extremely hard, and it's going to be a challenge even for the best killer mains in DBD. Singularity. Just like Pinhead, the whole concept of this character is just complicated. Not much to say about this killer though, except that you will need a surprisingly deep understanding of DBD in order not to get crushed in a match. You'll need to set up all of your cameras and balance your gameplay between chasing and patrolling a certain area, and trust me, it's not gonna be easy to do with this killer. The next one's the Spirit. Her gameplay is so much different compared to any other killer in the game, and she's one of my favorite killers in DBD. Look at my classy red nails though. The fact that you can't see survivors when using her power makes it really hard to chase, and you will need to heavily rely on predictions and mind games. I would never suggest a new player to start playing this character. The Hillbilly is a straightforward killer, but oh boy is it hard to play and master. Try to chase an experienced survivor and hit them with your chainsaw inside of a jungle gym and you'll immediately understand what I'm talking about. Mind gaming and downing somebody, making a quick flick around the corner takes so many hours of practice, making this guy one of the hardest killers to play in the game. The Nurse, one of the strongest, if not the strongest killer in the game, and we all know that it's incredibly hard to play this killer. The way you're gonna chase survivors with this killer literally has nothing in common with any other killer in the game. Being accurate when using her power through walls when good survivors are trying to juke and mind game is going to be incredibly hard. And when making a little mistake, you can find yourself on the wrong floor in a blink of an eye, ending a chase before it even starts. And now our final killer of the list. The hardest killer to play in DBD. The Blight. Still one of the best killers in DBD. Even though he might not be the strongest, I think many people will agree when I say he's the hardest to play. The amount of knowledge and skill required to play this character at his full potential is madness. Being able to bounce around, mind game, deal with weird hitboxes, and do crazy flicks all at once is just mental. If you're looking for a challenge, this is the killer for you. In any case, let us know if you agree with this tier list, and thanks for watching everybody.